Hello, my dear students in 4th primary, how are you? Now I want to ask you a question. Can you calculate the product of 40 times 6 or 100 times 25 using the properties and patterns we explored before? In the last lessons we learned about identity property. خدنا identity property وكمان عرفنا ايه هو commutative property وكمان associative property and how to identify the patterns. In today's lesson we will apply هنطبق بقى what we have learned before about these properties and identifying patterns. Today we will have lesson 8 applying patterns in multiplication in unit 5 concept 2. In this lesson we will use هنستخدم بقى النهارده decomposing and the associative property of multiplication to solve the equations with multiples of 10. And let's start this with axis part, review multiplying by 10 on page 225 on your school book. Let's see it all together. And here in your book, page 225, you will find 3 sets of problems. Set 1, set 2, and set 3. You are asked to solve each problem. مطلوب منك ان انت تحل كل problem mentally and think about any connections وهتفكر في connections والpatterns you will notice in each set of problems. And now I will give you time to think about this activity, and when we are back, you can discuss it. And now I am sure you have noticed, أنا متأكدة إن كلكم لاحظتوا إن pattern in these problems in set 1 we are multiplying by what? Yes, as you see here in set 1 multiplying by 10. This means يعني إيه multiply by 10؟ يعني هعمل إيه؟ أول حاجة I will multiply by 1 then add 0 in the ones place. So 2 times 10 شايفين 2 times 10 here 2 times 10 equals what? Yes, 2 times 10, it means that I will multiply 2 times 1 gives me 2 and then add this 0 in the ones place. We will do the same with 4 times 10. Here 4 times 10. 4 times 10, I will do 4 times 1 gives me 4 and add the 0 in the ones place. The same in 8 times 10. 8 times 10 equals what? 8 times 10 equals 80. 8 times 1, 8, and put the 0 in the ones place, as you see here. We can also notice كمان لاحظنا إيه؟ That we multiply 2 times 4 equals 8. The last number here, 2 times 4 equals what? 2 times 4 equals 8, right? طيب, and 8 times 10 equals 80, right? 8 times 10 equals 80. Okay. And this will help us, الكلام ده هيساعدنا if we need to multiply 2 times 4 times 8 at the same time. And as we will see this in our lesson later. The same pattern is repeated in set 2. نشوف بقى set number 2, the same pattern is repeated. أول حاجة we'll multiply 7 times 10 equals what? 7 times 10 equals 70 و 5 times 10 50. طب تعالوا نشوف 35 times 10 equals what? 35 times 10 أكني بالظبط بعمل 35 times 1 gives me 35 and add the 0 in the ones place. Okay, what about if I make 5 times 10? 5 times 10 gives me 35. 5 times 7 gives me what? 35. يبقى 35 is the product of 5 times 7. And here I will do the same in set number 3. So this is the pattern of multiplying by 10, 100, 1000. We will multiply the number we have by 1 وبعدين I will add the 0 in the ones place. And this is what we have done with 35 times 10. لما قلت 35 times 10 equals 350. And here 18 times 10 also 18 and put 0 it will be 180. And now let's move now to the build part, decomposing multiples of 10 on page 226 in your school book. Let's see, here is page 226. I am sure you still remember the factor triangles from the previous grades and we used them in our lessons in theme 1 if you remember it. and they will help us to solve the problems in this activity. Here we have 6 problems like you see here. These are the 6 problems. We need to decompose each number into a factor pair with 10. تعالوا نشوف كده in problem number 1. Problem number 1, we need to know 10 times what equals 40. Again, we need to know 10 times what equals 40. Yes, we can apply what we have noticed in Axis and think about what number times 1 gives me 4. 1 times what gives me 4? I am sure you all are saying now 4, and this is the right answer. 4 times 10 gives me 40, and this is my answer. In the same way, we can solve problem number 2. Type problem number 2, here we need to know 10 times what equals 20. Again, 10 times what equals 20. If we follow the same steps, we will find out that the missing number is 2. How much 10 times 2 gives me 20? So this is the answer. Now let's move to problem number 3. Here is problem number 3. Here we want to know 10 times what equals 70. Again, 10 times what equals 70? Yes, I am sure you are all saying now 7 times 10 equals 70, and this is the right answer. Now let's move to problem number 4. Problem number 4, the missing number is what? The same way, 10 times what equals 50? 10 times 5. So this is the missing number. And now, in problem number 5, 10 times what equals 90? Excellent. 10 times 9 is 90. And let's move to problem number 6, and this will be the last problem. Here, he's asking me 10, or ask yourself, 10 times what equals 110? Yes, what is the missing number here? The missing number is 11. Why? Because 10 times 11 gives me 110. And now in the second part of this activity on page 226, we need to know how many tens make up each number in the problems from 7 to 12. تعالوا نشوف بقى, here we have problems from 7 to 12. طيب, in problem number 7, let's start with problem number 7. هو بيسألني إيه؟ In problem number 7, we need to know how many tens make up 30. يعني إيه الكلام ده؟ يعني 30 فيها كام tens؟ We can solve this in different ways. على فكرة ده ممكن نحلها بكذا طريقة. ممكن حد يستخدم البيز 10 blocks. Okay? If you have 30 small blocks, لو عندي 30 small blocks, هقسمهم how many tens ازاي؟ You can use them to form 3 groups. ممكن أقسم 30 into 3 groups. طيب, كل جروب هيبقى فيها كام blocks؟ Yes, كل جروب هيبقى فيها 10 blocks. 10 و 10 و 10 gives me 30. So we can say that 30 is equal to 3 tenths. This is one way. ممكن أحلها بطريقة تانية. يبقى أول way ممكن أحلها بالدروينج. ممكن أحلها بطريقة تانية اللي هي إيه؟ The question here is about, بيسألني على إيه؟ على number of tenths. And we know that tenths has 1 0 only في ال ones place. مش التن عندها 1 0 only. So as we did before, we can think about number multiplied by 10. يعني 10 times what to get 30. Yes, 10 times what to get 30? 10 times what equals 30? Of course 10 times 3, and this is the answer. يبقى أنا كده حليتها ب 2 different ways. That means in 30 is equal to 3 tenths also. طيب, في بقى طريقة تانية very simple way. برضو السؤال هنا بيسألني about the number of tenths. So we can take the numbers starting from the tenths place. هو tenths place هنا مش 3, يبقى 30 equals 3 tenths. طيب, now let's move to problem number 9. Problem number 9, here we need to know how many tenths make up 160. يعني 160 دي فيها كام tenths؟ أول حاجة we need to find the number. يعني هعمل 10 times what gives me 160. طيب, هسأل نفسي برضو that 1 times what equals 16. Yes, 1 times 16 gives me 16, right? And then I will add the 0. يبقى 160 equals to 16 tenths. Okay. طيب, ممكن أعملها بطريقة تانية. We can take the numbers starting from the tenths place زي ما قلنا قبل كده. يبقى 160 equals how many tenths? I will take the numbers starting from the tenths place اللي هي 16. يبقى now I can solve it in two different ways and they will be the same answer. Now let's move to problem number 10. Problem number 10, he's asking me how many tenths are there in 140؟ يعني ال 140 فيها كام tenths؟ If you take the number starting from the tenths place to be the number of the tenths. طيب يعني ايه الكلام ده؟ يعني I'll take the number starting from the tenths to be 14 tenths. يبقى 140 equals to 14 tenths. Thus we can solve the rest of all the problems and find the number of tenths in each number. And now let's move to the second activity in build, which is multiplying by multiples of 10, 100 and 1000 on your school book page 227. Okay, now this one, here is this exercise. I want to solve it on your board, on the board. Let's see it all together. Okay, now let's solve this example all together. Here I have 7 times 20. Okay, type 7 times 20. Here I am going to think aloud with you now to show you how to solve it. تعالوا نفكر مع بعض. Here there are many ways to find the product of 7 times 20. ممكن أحلها بكذا طريقة. One way to solve this problem is to use what we learned in the last activity about decomposing. We can decompose the 20 to 2 and 10. So 7 by 20 is equal to 7 times 2 times 10. تعالوا نكتبها كده. يبقى 20 can be 2 times 10. 7 times 2 times 10. Right? Okay. So we can use the associative property. ممكن أستخدم هنا associative property we learned in the last lessons. So we can draw brackets around 7 times 2 and multiply them first. يبقى ممكن أحط bracket between 7 times 2. وأنا عارفة لما يكون عندي bracket I must start with the bracket first. So I will multiply the product which is 14 by 10. مش 7 times 2 gives me 14 يبقى أنا عندي هنا 14 times 10. Okay, now 14 times 10, this will be what? Yes, 14 times 1, 14, and put the 0 to be 140. This is similar to what we did in Axis, if you remember. Now we will multiply 14 by 1, and that is equal to 14, and then we will add the 0 in the ones place as I did here. So the answer will be 140. طيب ممكن حد فيكم يفكر بطريقة مختلفة أو طريقة تانية. You could use the pattern of multiplying by 10. طيب ممكن نحلها بطريقة تانية. 7 times 20 I will use the pattern. We can multiply the numbers and then add the 0 in the ones place. تعالوا نشوف كده. يعني 7 times 20 ممكن نحلها بطريقة تانية. I can say 7 times 2 equals 14 and then put the 0 to be also 140. It will give me the same answer. Now I have shown more than one way. دلوقتي عرفنا ان احنا ممكن نحلها باكتر من طريقه to think about problems because this is very important to have a toolkit of problem solving strategies. لازم الستراتيجيز كلها تبقى في مخي عشان اعرف اختار which strategy I will prefer to solve any problem. In the same way you can solve problem number 1. We need to find the product of 5 times 50. تعالوا نعمل كده another problem. يبقى this is the first one. Let's move to problem number 2. Here I have 5 times 50. Okay, I can solve it by the same way. I will decompose 5 into 5 times 10, right? تعالوا كده نعمل 5. I can decompose it into 5 times 10. وبعدين هعمل ايه؟ Let's write it all together. يبقى 5 times 5 times 10, right? Then I will draw brackets around 5 and 5 and then multiply them. يبقى 5 times 5 gives me what? 5 times 5 equals 25. Then multiply 25 by 10. 25 by 10 gives me what? Yes, 25 by 10 equals 250. 25 times 1, 25, and put the 0 as it is. Of course, we can use another way. طبعا ممكن نستخدم طريقة تانية عشان نحل the same problem. I can multiply 5 times 5 equals to 25 and then add the 0 in the ones place. تعالوا نعملها كده. يبقى 5 times 50 I can solve it. 5 times 5, 25, and put the 0 in the ones place to be 250, which is the same answer. Here in problem number 2, let's move to problem number 3. Now, let's move to problem number 3. Let's write it all together. Here, problem number 3. It's written as follows. 4 times 700. 4 times 700. Okay, I have this. Type. How can I solve it? We will decompose 700 into 7 times 100. تعالوا كده نقسم 700. 7 times 100. And then I will write it as 4 times 7 times 100. Right? Okay. Then we will draw brackets around 4 times 7, associative property. Right? When I put brackets, I must solve the brackets first. 4 times 7 equals what? 4 times 7 equals 28. And I will multiply it by 100. So, 28 times 100 gives me what? Yes, 28 times 100. يعني أكني بعمل بالظبط 28 times 1, 28, and put the 2 zeros in the ones and tens place. So, the answer is 2,800. Okay, طيب now we can solve this problem in another way. زي ما احنا متعودين ممكن نحل بكذا طريقة. I can multiply 4 times 7 and then 4 times 7 equals 28. Then I add the zeros. تعالوا نشوف كده. If I have the same problem here, what should I do? Yes, 4 times 700. I will multiply 4 times 7, 28, and put the 2 zeros in the ones and tens place to be 2,800. And now it will be very easy for you to solve problem number 4, which is 3 times 4,000. In the same way, هعمل 3 times 4 gives me 12, and put these 3 zeros in the ones, tens, and hundred place to be 12,000. Now in build, we have learned how to multiply numbers by multiples of 10 using different strategies. And now we will move to connect part on page 227. Let's see it all together. And now in page 227 in your school book, in writing about math, we will find 2 answers. هنلاقي 2 answers by هبة وأشرف. Like you see here. Here is the هبة وأشرف works. طيب تعالوا نشوف بقى how to find the product of 4 times 8 times 10. 4 times 8 times 10. I'll give you time to check the 2 answers. Decide how are they different or similar. هنشوف ال 2 answers دول different في ايه وزي بعض في ايه ودecide ونقرر which way you prefer to answer with. And when we are back, we can discuss it all together. And now after we have finished, have you noticed that the 2 answers have the same product? الاتنين عندهم نفس الانسر, right? So both answers also used both answers استخدموا ايه؟ Associative property we learned in the last lessons. But each one used the property differently. يعني كل واحد استخدم Associative property, الاتنين استخدموها بس بشكل مختلف عن التاني. هبة عملت ايه؟ هبة عملت brackets between 4 and 8 زي ما احنا شايفين كده, which is equal to 32. يعني هي عملت bracket between 4 و 8 وقالت ان 48 equals 32. Then she multiplied 32 by 10, right? طيب عملت ايه to multiply 32 by 10? عملت 32 times 1 gives me 32 and then she add the 0. So the product is 320 as you see. تعالوا نشوف بقى أشرف عمل إيه. أشرف drew brackets around 8 و 10. أشرف بقى المرة دي حط brackets around 8 and 10. So 8 times 10 equals 80. And then he multiplied 80 by 4. 80 times 4 gives me what? Gives me عمل 8 times 4 32 and then put the 0 وطلع برضو الانسر 320 as you see here. This means what? This means we can solve the problem using different ways. زي ما احنا متعودين ممكن نحل أي problem in different ways. طيب تعالوا بقى نستخدم our skills and solve more problems in practice on page 228. I will give you time to think about the first 3 problems in this activity and then we will do it all together. Let's see the practice part. Now let's solve the practice part. I am sure the problems here will be very easy for you. As we can see, the problems are divided into 2 parts. متقسمة ل 2 parts. In the first part, we need to decompose the multiples of 10, 100 و1000 and draw brackets around the 2 numbers to multiply first. دايما بعمل brackets على النمبرز اللي أنا اللي هبدأ بيها أو هعملها multiply by each other first. We have practiced this in build. In problem 1, we need to multiply 5 times 70. Let's solve it all together. 5 times 70. So we will decompose 70 into 7 and 10. يبقى هعمل 70 7 times 10. Right? يبقى أنا عندي هنا 5 times 7 times 10. Then what should I do? I will put brackets between 5 and 7. So put brackets between 5 and 7. I will start with 5 times 7 وبعدين البرودكت هعمله times 10. هو 5 times 7 equals what? Yes, 35. أنا now I will make 35 times 10. 35 times 1 gives me 35 and then put the 0 to be 350 and this is my answer. In the same way, you can solve problem number 2. This is problem number 2. You want me to multiply 8 times 30. So what should I do? I will decompose 30 into 3 and 10. يبقى 30 هقسمها ل 3 times 10. So I can write 8 times 3 times 10. Then what should I do? I will put brackets around what? Yes, around 8 times 3 and then multiply the answer by 10. So 8 times 3 equals what? Yes, we all know that 8 times 3 equals 24. يبقى here I will make 24 times 10. 24 times 10 equals what? Yes, of course, 24 times 10 equals 240 and this is my answer. Now we can do the same with problem number 3. Here I want to multiply 4 times 40, right? So 4 times 40, I will decompose 40 into 4 times 10. Okay, so or I can make it 4 times 4 equals what? Yes, 4 times 4 equals 16 and put the 0 to be 160 and this is my answer. And now let's move to the second part in this practice. We will solve the problems using the strategy you prefer. In problem number 4 here, problem number 4, you want me to multiply 6 times 90. I will use the same strategy we have just used in the first part. طيب ممكن حد تاني يقول لي لا I want to multiply 6 times 9 first and then put the 0. Yes, you can do it in this way. طيب 6 times 9 equals what? Yes, 6 times 9 equals, yes, 54. طيب 54 only? No, don't forget to put the 0. So I'll put the 0 here to be 540 and this is my answer. تعالوا نشوف بقى now problem number 5. Problem number 5 here, I want to multiply 7,000 times 6. You can multiply 7 times 6 first. 7 times 6 equals what? Yes, 7 times 6 equals 42. What about the zeros? I will put the zeros in the ones, tens, and hundred place to be 42,000. And now let's move to problem number 6, and this will be the last one here in the practice part. I want to multiply 600 times 4. using any way you want. We can do this by multiplying the numbers and then add the zeros in their places. تعالوا نشوف كده. ممكن بطريقة تانية أعمل decompose to the multiples of 10, 100 and 1000 and draw the brackets around the number to multiply first. دايما بعمل bracket على النمبر اللي أنا هعمله multiplication first and then multiply it by the third one. So you can do or solve it with any strategy you want. The product in all the strategy, أي strategy هستخدمها هلاقي إن ال product equals 2400. Okay, and this is the right answer. And now we have finished the practice part now. And by the end of our lesson today, we have learned how to use the decomposing and the associative property. We have also كمان اتعلمنا how to identify patterns of multiplication to solve problems with multiples of 10. And if you need more practice, you can access the knowledge bank using the code shown here on page 225. And this is the last lesson in Unit 5, which has two concepts. The first concept we have learned multiplicative comparison وكمان creating and solving equations with unknown quantities. في concept 2 تعلمنا ال patterns of multiplying by multiples of 10 and we have also explored the commutative property وتعلمنا ايه هي ال commutative property وكمان ال associative property وعرفنا ايه هي ال zero property و identity property and used them واستخدمناهم to solve different multiplication problems. You can share with us your comments on this lesson and the strategy you prefer والstrategy اللي انت بتحب تحل بيها and why do you prefer it. You can also use the digital copy of your mathematics book to evaluate your knowledge of concept 2 and all of the lessons in this unit with the help of your teachers. Every day your skills and knowledge of mathematics will be extended. In the coming lesson, we will learn more skills and explore more topics that will help you with the challenges you may have. Now, see you next lesson in Unit 6. Thank you so much for your watching and goodbye.